While President Biden is in Japan for the G7 summit, we have the debt ceiling talks taking place here. And House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's office and the White House negotiators, unfortunately, had a breakdown today in all their communications. And so what might have been any degree of optimism has now shriveled up and blown away. And Democrats in Congress, literally some of them yesterday, were grumbling that the White House negotiators would agree to pull back on reckless spending. Imagine Democrats upset that reckless spending might go away. And some within the Democratic Party are actually urging the president to invoke the 14th Amendment.
Republicans are not serious about finding a solution. So we are urging President Biden to utilize his authority under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution.
Wow, that was Democrat Senator Ed Markey yesterday. And did these calls from Democrats lead to the White House backtracking? Well, joining me now to discuss that and more is Congressman Pat Fallon. He serves on the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, as well as the House Armed Services Committee. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Fallon, great to see you. Welcome back to Washington Watch.
Jody, it's great to see you, my friend. God bless you.
Well, God bless you as well, and thank you for joining us. I know you've got a lot of plates spinning in your world these days, but listen, Speaker McCarthy just this week expressed at least a degree of optimism about the debt ceiling talks, and yet it all seemed to break down today. From your understanding, what happened?
Well, yeah, Jody, I was with Speaker McCarthy a couple of days ago when he had that press conference, and he did express a lot of optimism, and I thought a deal could be, forged. But I think you're right. I think the theory being that the Democrats on the Hill, the more radical element that Joe Biden has proven over the last 2 years to always cater to, push back about any kind of reasonable limits on spending. And Jody, let's look at the deal that we did pass. What it's going to do is if it became law intact, it would take the debt to GDP ratio from 118% and actually reduce it finally to 106%. So while that's not where we need to land, that's a good first step. And then it would just accept it free spending and would be a 1% growth annually over the next decade. And guess what? We're just asking the Democrats to accept spending that they just touted 4 months ago. So it's just they're being incredibly unreasonable, and it's very unfortunate. And Garrett Graves' body language was not promising when he walked out of that room.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I agree wholeheartedly with you. And, we're talking about pre-COVID spending levels, and everyone understands that during the pandemic, spending went up. There were a host of issues taking place to try to cover and help the safety of the American citizens and so forth. But now those days are over. The pandemic is over. And to go back to the spending, they are absolutely, you're correct, they're the unreasonable ones, unwilling to go back. They want to maintain a bunch of reckless spending. How are we going to get over this hurdle?
Well, there's a financial day of Armageddon approaching. And whether it's going to be tomorrow, in a week, or in 5 years or 10, it's going to happen if we don't correct the error of our ways. We cannot continuously spend more than we take in. A state government can't do it. School districts, cities, counties, and we personally. But somehow the federal government can, and the Democrats are perfectly fine with that. Because Jody, you were there. You saw that they had no realistic or reasonable plans to balance the budget ever. They just want to keep spending because what they're doing is they're spending and they're pandering for votes so they can win the next election. And that's very unfortunate. But with this issue has got to be addressed, and it's got to be addressed now because we have China looming, and they would like nothing more than for the international community to trade in the yuan and not in the dollar.
Pat, I love the way you express these complicated issues and bring it down in such a way that everyone can understand. And when you say they are pandering for votes, that is what's going on. In fact, I want to play a clip here for you from Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Play clip 5, and I want to get your reaction to this.
We find ourselves in the midst of a GOP manufactured default crisis because House Republicans have chosen to try and hold our economy, our small businesses, everyday Americans hostage to unreasonable ransom demands.
Yes, talk about pandering votes. How do you respond to this?
I had to use my glasses, Jody, to see on the screen what his posters were. I got caught there. Well, listen, Hakeem Jeffries is highly intelligent. He's also very dangerous because he is an effective demagogue. He's a really good speaker, and he can communicate well. Now, what he's saying, the content of what he says, is completely false. It's taken out of context, and it's not what we all value, which is truth in context. So it's the same old stuff. Remember, Paul Ryan, had a plan to balance the budget, and they had these TV ads where they were pushing grandma off a cliff. We are spending. This is what the Democrats don't. This is the one of those inconvenient truths, to borrow an Al Gore phrase. We are spending $400 billion a year right now, Jody, on the interest on the debt. $400 billion with a B. Think of the things that could be done with that money. I think that we were running some cocktail napkin math in our office last week. We think that it's every 18 to 22-year-old could go to a state college, at least tuition paid, for free in the entire country for $400 billion. And we're throwing it essentially in a furnace. And the Democrats, Jody, are perfectly fine with continuing to do that until that number reaches, what, $1 trillion? This has got to be addressed.
That's a staggering figure. It's mind-boggling to me. Listen, Congressman, if I can, I'd like to switch gears. You also serve on the House Oversight Committee, which you and I served on together. And you guys have so much going on right now, investigating the corruption within the Biden family. Can you give us the latest update into that particular probe?
Yes. So what we've now, there's something called a SAR. It's a suspicious activity report. And financial institutions by law are required to file them if they see something that looks like fraud, could be money laundering, sexual trafficking, things of that nature. And you could go your entire life. Most Americans go through their entire life with none generated by their own big financial activity. The Biden family has had somewhere in the neighborhood of between 170 to 250 SARs filed on their financial transactions. So that's really, really odd. Case in point, you got Hunter Biden, who was a derelict, an adult derelict by any definition, and then becomes an international success and a multimillionaire businessman. The only thing that changed is his dad became vice president. They formed 20 shell companies, and we don't know what they do. Nobody can define. Even the Democrats can't tell us what service is provided or what product is sold. And yet $10 million, we know for sure right now. It was $1 million only a couple of weeks ago because those SARs, Jody, members of Congress have always had access to them until Joe Biden became president. And any SAR, depending on, it didn't matter what individual it was generated for. But they denied us that access until we had subpoena power and became the majority party in the House. And now we know it's $10 million wired by foreign nationals and foreign entities, some very close to the Chinese Communist Party, wired to Hunter Biden, but they weren't just directly wired to Hunter Biden. Shell company after shell company to a business associate to then Hunter and then to other members of the Biden family.
Unbelievable. Listen, I want to get to, you are the chair of a subcommittee. I want to get to a hearing that you had, but one of the issues, Congressman, you hear frequently is, where is all this going? Just real briefly, are there going to be any prosecutions? Is anyone going to get in trouble for these major problems that we're having, be it through the weaponization or the Biden family? Are we going to see indictments?
Yeah, what we're doing on our end is we're going where the evidence leads us. And if the Biden family's clean, then fine. Now, if they were clean, I think they would have, quote unquote, come clean a couple of years ago and simply said, hey, here's all our financial records. I have nothing to hide. Check it out. But they didn't do that. They did the exact opposite. So are there going to be indictments? Hard to say yet, Jody, because we have only uncovered the tip of the iceberg. We've only been subpoenaing records of known business associates, bank records. We haven't gone after Hunter Biden yet, because what they would do there, Hunter and Joe, they just lawyer up for the next year and a half to go past the November election. And then with the weaponization of the FBI, there's so much we still don't know. The whistleblowers that testified in front of Jim Jordan's committee, it just so happens that all 4 of them had their security clearances revoked. But the Democrats are trying to argue that that wasn't retaliation. Clearly it was. And if what they're saying is true, then people should be fired and people should be indicted. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. Congressman, I'm going to have to leave it there, but thank you, Congressman Pat Fallon. Thanks for your leadership and all you do. Thanks for coming on the program this evening.
Thanks, Jody. Anytime. God bless. Take care.